In 1982, an unknown individual laced several bottles of extra-strength Tylenol in stores in Chicago and nearby towns with more than 3 times the lethal dose of potassium cyanide. The way potassium cyanide works is it stops your body from making adenosine triphosphate, which you need to do cellular respiration. This ended up killing 7 people. The first victim was a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman, who had stayed home from school because she had a sore throat. Her parents gave her some extra-strength Tylenol. After she was given the Tylenol, she briefly went to the bathroom, then collapsed on the floor. Her dad called out to her, but she didn't respond. He walked in to check on her to see his only child out cold on the floor, her eyes dilated. She was rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead only a few hours later. Mere hours later, in Arlington Heights, a neighboring town, 27-year-old mailman Adam Janis wasn't feeling too hot, so I picked him some Tylenol at the store, which he later took and collapsed in his home. He was rushed to the hospital and died a few hours later. When he died, his family came to his house to grieve. The visiting party included, among others, his brother, Stanley Janis, and his wife, Teresa Janis. Stanley said he had a migraine, which is a common occurrence during grief, so he said he was going to go take some Tylenol. Stanley's wife, Teresa, asked him to get her some too. He noticed a bottle on Adam's counter, so he took from that. A few minutes later, Stanley collapsed on the floor, causing his wife to freak out. As he was being taken into an ambulance, she fell over too. Stanley died later that day, and Teresa died a few days later. So in just a few hours, 3 members of the same family all died due to one singular bottle. But if it weren't for the Janises, this entire thing would have been brushed off as a freak accident. When Johnson & Johnson, the parent company of Tylenol at the time, were interviewed on the matter, it was the first they had heard of it, and they learned more from the interviewer than the interviewer learned from them. James E. Burke, the CEO at the time, decided, I'm not letting any more people die, and he put the people first, and the company second. They put out statements telling people to not take Tylenol until they figured out what was going on. And when Paula Prince, the 7th and final victim, was found dead on her bathroom floor, her face half covered in makeup, James E. Burke initiated a recall of then unseen size, recalling 31 million units of Tylenol. Johnson & Johnson then worked with the FDA to make 3-layer tamper-evident packaging. Before this, Tylenol was just sold in a box. The bottles weren't sealed in any way. They just had caps on. That's it. No plastic wrapping. Nothing. The 3-layer tamper-evident packaging went like this. First, it was in a glued box. Second, it had a plastic wrap around the cap that to open the bottle you need to break. And third was a foil seal under the cap, which also had to be broken to access the medication. This way, if your Tylenol was tampered with, you could easily tell and dispose of it. Tylenol also temporarily switched from being in 2-part gel capsules with the medication stored inside to solid tablets, which are made of the medication. James E. Burke also set up 2 hotlines. One was toll-free for people to voice concerns and ask questions. And the second was for tips on the killer. J&J also put posters everywhere, telling people to be cautious, and James E. Burke went on multiple news stations to do interviews and PSAs, making sure to reassure the public. Tylenol's stock went down for a bit, but within 3 months it had gone back up to where it was before, and then it proceeded to rise even more. Johnson & Johnson's response is widely considered to be a prime example of good crisis management. Soon after, the FDA made tamper-evident packaging mandatory by all over-the-top medication, and Congress passed the Federal Anti-Tampering Act, which has been dubbed the Tylenol Bill. Many other things have adapted tamper-evident packaging over time, which is why water bottles have that plastic ring on the cap, why ice cream scrounds have plastic around the top, and why nearly everything is individually wrapped. James E. Burke sadly passed away in 2012, but even today, his responsible actions from nearly half a century ago still work to protect the rights of citizens.